Have you ever wondered what truly happened in Heath Ledger's final days, beyond the headlines, beyond the mystery? His death in January 2008 sent shockwaves across the world. The young actor who had transformed cinema with Brokeback Mountain and redefined the Joker in The Dark Knight was suddenly gone at just 28. The public saw a tragedy, but those who knew him saw something deeper, a man consumed by his art, struggling with exhaustion, loneliness, and the heavy burden of perfection. The story of Heath Ledger's last days isn't one of darkness alone, it's one of immense creativity, emotional turbulence, and haunting beauty. His friends and colleagues have since spoken out, revealing fragments of truth, moments of laughter, fear, and brilliance that paint a more human portrait of a man who burned brighter than most and paid the price for it. By the time Heath Ledger began filming The Dark Knight, he was already respected for his craft, but the Joker would take him somewhere entirely new and dangerously deep. Friends later revealed that Heath immersed himself completely in the character, transforming his apartment into a kind of psychological laboratory. He kept a diary filled with chaotic sketches, disturbing quotes, and newspaper clippings that helped him understand the Joker's fractured mind. Those close to him noticed the intensity but didn't realize how consuming it had become. Michael Caine once said that when Heath entered the set in full Joker persona, even seasoned actors were rattled. It wasn't acting, it was possession. He stayed in character between takes, speaking in that chilling voice, perfecting every twitch and smirk. The performance was groundbreaking, but the process came with a cost. Friends described him as sleeping less, eating irregularly, and withdrawing into his thoughts. Heath wasn't spiraling in the traditional sense, he was chasing authenticity. He wanted the Joker to feel real, to disturb audiences, in a way no comic villain ever had. The irony is that his greatest artistic triumph became intertwined with his unraveling. The more he explored the Joker's chaos, the more detached he became from ordinary life. Those who loved him would later say that the performance that immortalized him also drained him emotionally, mentally, and physically. When The Dark Knight hit theaters, fans saw a legend. But for his friends, it was bittersweet. The role that made him unforgettable had also taken too much. Heath Ledger was known for his relentless pursuit of artistic truth. Whether playing a rebellious knight, a closeted cowboy, or a maniacal villain, he approached each role with unflinching commitment. Friends often described him as a perfectionist to the point of obsession. He wasn't interested in fame, he was interested in honesty. But the deeper he went into his work, the harder it became for him to come back out. After finishing The Dark Knight, Heath confessed to a few close friends that he was sleeping barely 2 hours a night. He couldn't shut off his mind. The Joker still lingered, not as a voice or hallucination, but as an energy that refused to leave. Michelle Williams, his former partner and the mother of his daughter Matilda, once said that Heath was the most alive person she had ever known. But in those final months, that vitality began to blur into restlessness. He'd tell friends he felt trapped between exhilaration and exhaustion, constantly creating, but rarely resting. His notebook, found later, revealed a chaotic brilliance, sketches, notes, clippings, and dark humor intertwined. It wasn't madness, it was intensity without pause. Christopher Nolan, who directed The Dark Knight, later said that Heath demanded so much from himself that it was both inspiring and frightening. He pushed boundaries not because the studio required it, but because his own spirit did. Yet, perfection has a price. When the cameras stopped rolling, Heath struggled to transition back to normal life. He was proud of his work, but his body and mind were drained. Those close to him began to worry, not because he seemed lost, but because he never slowed down. Behind the iconic smile of the Joker was an artist who couldn't rest, driven by love for his craft, haunted by the impossibility of perfection. In the months leading up to his death, Heath Ledger's friends noticed one recurring theme: he couldn't sleep. The same passion that made him brilliant also made his mind restless. He once told the New York Times that he was taking Ambien just to catch a few hours of rest, but it rarely worked. "My body's exhausted, and my mind's still going," he said. Those words, now haunting in hindsight, perfectly captured his struggle. Sleep deprivation began affecting everything: his mood, his focus, even his immune system. Friends would call him late at night, only to find him still awake, sketching ideas, or playing chess. On film sets, he remained cheerful and professional, but off camera, he seemed increasingly detached. He wasn't reckless, but he was clearly running on empty. Heath often joked about being addicted to movement. He hated idleness. Even when he wasn't working, he filled his days with projects, directing, writing, and exploring music videos. But this constant motion left little room for calm. He tried yoga, meditation, and even herbal remedies, but nothing quieted his thoughts. Close friends later revealed that he wasn't taking drugs to escape, he was trying to rest. Prescription medication, painkillers for old injuries, sleeping pills for insomnia became his nightly attempt to stop the mental noise. Tragically, the combination would later prove fatal. What haunts those who knew him most is how normal it all seemed at the time. He wasn't spiraling or self-destructive. He was simply tired, exhausted from work, fatherhood, travel, and fame. He wasn't reckless, just human. And in trying to find a few hours of peace, Heath Ledger made a mistake that ended everything. His sleepless nights were not signs of madness. They were the byproduct of a mind that refused to rest, a soul too restless for stillness. Amid the chaos of fame, one thing kept Heath grounded: his daughter, Matilda. Friends say that fatherhood was the most fulfilling role he ever played. Whenever he spoke about her, his face lit up. He kept photos of her in his wallet, on his phone, even in his trailer during filming. Michelle Williams, his former partner, once said, "Being a father gave Heath purpose. It softened him." In interviews, Heath would often mention how fatherhood changed him. He wanted to be better, calmer, more present. He described Matilda as his greatest source of joy, calling her laughter the only thing that could silence his mind. When filming The Dark Knight, he would often fly home just to spend a few days with her crew. Members recalled how he'd show them her latest drawings or videos between takes, but after his split with Michelle, the distance began to weigh on him. Friends say that being away from Matilda was one of the hardest parts of his life. He missed the daily routines, breakfast, bedtime stories, the little things that gave him peace. Though he tried to stay positive, he often spoke about how fame made privacy and normal fatherhood almost impossible. Michelle later shared that, despite their separation, they remained a family in spirit. "He was a wonderful dad," she said. Matilda was his light. Even in his final days, Heath was planning future visits, sending gifts, and recording messages for her. For all his artistic ambition, Heath Ledger's truest identity was that of a father who adored his child. His friends often say that if you wanted to see Heath happy, truly happy, all you had to do was watch him with Matilda. In those moments, the restless artist disappeared, replaced by a man full of warmth, laughter, and love. Fame can feel like the brightest light and the darkest shadow, and for Heath Ledger, it was both. As his career soared after Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight, his world became smaller. Friends say he struggled with how fame distorted human connection. Everywhere he went, he was recognized, photographed, and sometimes judged. The same people who praised his genius also dissected his flaws. It was exhausting. Heath wasn't a recluse, but he valued authenticity. He hated pretense, small talk, and industry politics. Friends recall him leaving red carpet events early or skipping Hollywood parties altogether, preferring to spend the night painting, reading, or playing guitar. He wasn't trying to escape fame, he was trying to protect his peace. But isolation, even when self-chosen, has a cost. Those who knew him intimately said he often felt misunderstood. His energy was magnetic, curious, philosophical, mischievous, yet people saw only the movie star. He longed for genuine conversation, the kind that made him forget about cameras and critics. In his final months, that craving for realness sometimes turned into withdrawal. He would cancel plans, stay home for days, or disappear into creative projects. His friends weren't alarmed at first. Heath had always been introspective, a man who lived in his thoughts, but after long shoots and sleepless nights, that solitude began to blur into loneliness. One close friend described it best: he was surrounded by people, yet completely alone. That quiet disconnection became one of the unspoken tragedies of his life. He had fame, admiration, and artistic freedom, yet what he wanted most was simple: peace, privacy, and human warmth. Sadly, those are the very things fame often takes away. In the heart of New York's Soho district stood the apartment that became both Heath Ledger's refuge and his final resting place. Friends described it as a reflection of his restless creativity, scattered with art supplies, chessboards, vinyl records, and handwritten notes. There were shelves of psychology books, camera equipment, and musical instruments. It wasn't messy in a chaotic sense, but alive, like a space built for a mind that never stopped thinking. That apartment was where Heath tried to find balance. He spent quiet mornings sketching ideas for short films and evenings tinkering with music. He was preparing to direct his first feature and had a list of creative projects pinned to his wall. But amid this inspiration, his insomnia worsened. He often called friends late at night, his voice calm but weary, saying he couldn't sleep. They thought it was just part of his routine, another restless night in the city that never sleeps. On the 22nd of January 2008, his housekeeper found him unresponsive in that same apartment. The discovery sent shockwaves across the world, but those who knew him best refused to let that room be remembered as a place of tragedy. To them, it was where he dreamed, worked, laughed, and lived freely away from the noise of Hollywood. In the weeks after his death, visitors described the apartment as hauntingly peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the windows, landing on unfinished sketches and stacks of film notes. It was a creative sanctuary frozen in time, evidence of a mind that was still building, still reaching for something extraordinary. The apartment became a metaphor for Heath himself. Brilliant, messy, full of life, but ultimately too fragile to contain so much energy. It was where genius and exhaustion met the space where an artist gave everything he had until there was nothing left. In the years after Heath Ledger's passing, friends and colleagues began to open up, not to sensationalize his story, but to finally tell the truth behind the myths. They spoke of a man who wasn't reckless or lost, but sensitive, curious, and deeply alive. His close circle revealed that Heath had been struggling with insomnia, yes, but also balancing fatherhood, intense filming schedules, and emotional exhaustion. Actors like Christian Bale, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Gary Oldman described him as a perfectionist who cared more about art than fame. He wanted to feel everything, one friend said. That was both his gift and his curse. They remembered him as playful and kind, the sort of person who would turn serious conversations into laughter in seconds. Yet behind that humor was someone searching for calm he never quite found. Michelle Williams shared in later interviews that Heath's energy was too electric for the world. She didn't mean it as a criticism, but as recognition of how intensely he lived. Others recalled that he had big plans directing projects, new roles, even plans to spend more time in Australia with his family. His death, accidental and sudden, wasn't a reflection of despair, but of exhaustion. The confession that broke hearts came from one of his friends who said he wasn't running from life, he just couldn't slow down. That one line captured the essence of Heath Ledger. He wasn't self-destructive. He was simply human, driven by passion, undone by sleeplessness, and loved more deeply than he probably ever realized. In the end, those who knew him best didn't remember the tragedy. They remembered his laughter, his warmth, and the way he made everyone around him feel like they were part of something beautiful, even if just for a moment. After his performance as the Joker, Heath Ledger was suddenly elevated to an almost mythical level of fame. Critics called it career-defining, and whispers of a posthumous Oscar had already begun, even before the film's release. But behind that praise was immense pressure. Heath wasn't chasing glory, he was chasing authenticity, yet the world's expectations became suffocating. He often said he didn't want to be known as the Joker actor, but as a creator who kept evolving. Friends recalled that Heath struggled with the aftermath of greatness. He worried that no performance could match the depth of what he had just done. That fear wasn't vanity, it was vulnerability. He questioned if he could keep surprising audiences without losing pieces of himself along the way. In interviews, he deflected praise with humility, yet those close to him sensed a quiet anxiety underneath. Even during the final weeks of his life, Heath was still working, rehearsing lines, sketching film ideas, writing in notebooks. He never stopped creating because he was terrified of stillness. But stillness is what his body desperately needed. The toll of emotional immersion, lack of sleep, and the pressure to live up to an impossible standard pushed him to exhaustion. Christopher Nolan once said, Heath's performance was fearless, but what many didn't see was how much of himself he gave to it. That, in many ways, became his tragedy, an artist so consumed by authenticity that he forgot to protect himself from the weight of it. The pressure to be great made Heath legendary. But it also reminded those closest to him that genius often carries an unbearable cost, a burden even the strongest hearts can't always bear alone. On the night before his passing, Heath Ledger seemed calm, even content. He spoke with a few friends and family members, discussing upcoming projects and plans to see Matilda. Nothing in his voice suggested despair. One friend said, "He was tired, not troubled." That detail became one of the most heartbreaking truths. There were no warnings, no cries for help, just quiet fatigue. He spent his final evening in his Soho apartment, reportedly practicing lines for his next film, The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. His scripts were marked with notes and small doodles, as though he was still shaping the character. He ordered tea, played some music, and texted a few friends before going to bed. It was an ordinary night, the kind that makes the tragedy even harder to comprehend. When he didn't wake up the next morning, the shock was immediate and devastating. Friends initially refused to believe it. He wasn't reckless, they said. He was simply exhausted. The autopsy confirmed an accidental overdose, a combination of prescription medications that, together, became lethal. He hadn't taken them to escape life, but to finally rest. Those who loved him most have since said that Heath's final hours were peaceful. There was no chaos, no drama, just silence. And maybe that's the saddest part. After years of giving everything to his art, the man who could never sleep finally did. The world mourned loudly, but in his last moments, Heath Ledger left quietly, leaving behind a stillness that no one was ready for. News of Heath Ledger's death spread like wildfire. Within hours, fans gathered outside his apartment, leaving flowers, candles, and letters. The world couldn't accept that someone so young, so brilliant, was gone. Media outlets scrambled for explanations, but his friends and family asked for one thing: dignity. They wanted the world to remember the artist, not the headlines. Across Hollywood, tributes poured in. Jake Gyllenhaal, Naomi Watts, and Michelle Williams spoke with tears in their eyes, remembering Heath's spirit. Christian Bale called him a friend and a brother in art. Christopher Nolan described him as an extraordinary man who gave everything to his work. It was clear that Heath hadn't just impressed his peers, he had inspired them. Fans around the world mourned in unison. Vigils were held in New York, Los Angeles, Sydney, and London. People watched his scenes from Brokeback Mountain and The Dark Knight on repeat, unable to look away from the raw intensity he brought to the screen. Even those who had never met him felt the weight of his loss, as though an entire generation had lost one of its brightest lights. When The Dark Knight finally premiered months later, the theater was silent during the credits. As Heath's name appeared, audiences stood and applauded. It wasn't for the Joker, it was for the man who had given everything to make that performance immortal. His posthumous Oscar win the following year felt bittersweet, a recognition that came too late for him to see, yet a tribute that ensured his legacy would never fade. Heath Ledger had become more than an actor. He had become a symbol of creative brilliance, vulnerability, and the fragile balance between genius and humanity. 11. Michelle Williams' heartbreak. In the aftermath of Heath Ledger's death, few people were more deeply affected than Michelle Williams, his former partner and the mother of his daughter, Matilda. Their relationship had been passionate but complex, two artists drawn together by creativity and mutual respect, yet ultimately pulled apart by the chaos of fame and the pressures of their individual careers. Even after they separated, love never fully disappeared. It simply transformed into care and shared responsibility for their child. When news of Heath's passing reached her, Michelle was filming overseas. Crew members recalled the silence that fell across the set as she broke down. She released a brief statement soon after, saying, "My heart is broken. I am the mother of the sweetest child who has lost her father." Her words captured not only grief, but the quiet dignity with which she handled the tragedy. Those close to her said that Michelle's pain wasn't only about loss, it was about empathy. She had seen Heath's restlessness up close, the sleepless nights, the endless drive to create, the struggle to slow down. She understood that his death wasn't self-destruction, but exhaustion. Friends say she never blamed him. Instead, she chose to honor the best parts of him through their daughter. Over the years, Michelle has fiercely protected Matilda's privacy, raising her away from the public eye, surrounded by reminders of her father's love. She has often spoken about how Matilda carries Heath's spirit, his curiosity, humor, and warmth. That continuity has been her healing. For Michelle, grief became a long conversation with memory. She once said, "If you lose someone, you love them differently after they're gone, but you keep loving them." Through Matilda, through compassion, and through art, Michelle Williams continues to love Heath Ledger quietly, endlessly, and with grace. 12. The Joker's Shadow. When The Dark Knight finally premiered months after Heath Ledger's passing, audiences were mesmerized and haunted. His portrayal of the Joker wasn't just a performance, it was an embodiment of chaos, wit, and pain so authentic that critics called it terrifyingly human. But for those who had known Heath personally, the applause came with an ache. They couldn't separate the brilliance from the cost. Friends who saw the film early described mixed emotions. They were proud, yet devastated. Every laugh, every sneer reminded them of how deeply Heath had dived into darkness to bring the Joker to life. Michael Caine said he forgot his lines the first time Heath entered a scene. Christian Bale remembered feeling uneasy, as though standing beside something otherworldly. That intensity was precisely what made the performance immortal and what many believed contributed to his unraveling. After the film's release, endless theories emerged, linking the Joker directly to Heath's death. But those closest to him clarified that the role didn't kill him, exhaustion did. The character didn't drive him mad, his own unwillingness to rest did. Yet symbolically, the Joker became part of his legacy, the shadow that followed his brilliance. At the Oscars, when his name was called for Best Supporting Actor, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Michelle Williams accepted the award on behalf of their daughter, tears shimmering in her eyes. That moment encapsulated Heath's duality, a life of art and love, genius and fragility. The Joker lives forever on screen, but Heath Ledger was far more than that haunting smile. He was a father, a friend, and an artist who poured every ounce of himself into truth. His performance may have cast a long shadow, but behind it remains the light of a man who gave everything to his craft and left behind brilliance that refuses to fade. 13. The legacy he never saw. Heath Ledger never lived to witness the tidal wave of admiration that followed The Dark Knight. His portrayal reshaped modern cinema, influencing an entire generation of actors. Directors began speaking about the Ledger standard, the rare ability to disappear completely into a role without compromise. Yet Heath himself was never chasing legend, he was chasing honesty. After his death, tributes came from every corner of the industry. Actors like Gary Oldman, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Cate Blanchett spoke about his fearlessness and humility. His performance became the benchmark for complexity, proving that a superhero film could deliver Oscar-level art. Beyond the screen, his creative circle kept his dream alive by finishing the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, with Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell stepping in to complete his role, all donating their earnings to Matilda. Years later, Heath's influence continues to ripple through pop culture. Young actors cite him as inspiration, not only for his craft but for his sincerity. His refusal to conform his authenticity became a blueprint for artistic integrity. What makes Heath's legacy so powerful is that it transcends tragedy. People don't remember him simply for how he died, but for how fiercely he lived. He reminded the world that vulnerability and genius often walk hand in hand. His friends often say that if Heath could see the global admiration, he'd laugh shyly and say, "It was never about that." His story endures not as a cautionary tale, but as a celebration of art, love, and the fleeting beauty of human brilliance. Heath Ledger didn't just change cinema, he changed hearts. And even though he never saw the full scope of his impact, his spirit remains alive in every artist who dares to give everything for truth. After Heath Ledger's sudden passing, his family, especially his parents and sisters, became the silent guardians of his memory. While the world mourned loudly, they chose a quieter path, one built on dignity and love. His father, Kim Ledger, spoke with calm grace during one of his earliest interviews, saying, "Heath wasn't reckless. He was tired. He just wanted to sleep." That statement became a cornerstone of understanding his final days, a reminder that exhaustion, not despair, had taken him. His mother, Sally, described Heath as a generous and gentle soul. She refused to let his story become tabloid tragedy, insisting that people remember his kindness, humor, and deep empathy. His sisters, Kate and Ashley, often spoke about how protective Heath had been, how he never let fame separate him from family. Even at the height of his success, he called home almost daily, sharing stories, ideas, and laughter. After his death, the Ledgers established foundations to support young artists and mental health initiatives in Australia, continuing his spirit of giving. They worked tirelessly to ensure that Heath's name represented creativity, not chaos. Every public statement from them carried warmth, no bitterness, no blame, only love. When The Dark Knight premiered, Heath's family attended quietly, sitting among fans rather than celebrities. They wept and smiled in equal measure, proud that his final work would touch millions. Over the years, they've continued to nurture Matilda's connection to her father's homeland, keeping his heritage alive in her life. Through their grace, Heath's family turned grief into purpose. They showed that love can outlast loss, that when the world takes your son, brother, or friend, you honor him not through words, but through the kindness you continue to share. Heath Ledger's name will forever be associated with brilliance, but also with misunderstanding. Too often, society romanticizes the suffering of artists, as though pain is the price of creativity. But Heath's friends insist that he wasn't broken or doomed. He was human, he was passionate, sensitive, and endlessly curious, a man who wanted to explore every corner of emotion and existence. To remember Heath only through the lens of tragedy would be to miss the full picture. He was the man who skateboarded down New York streets with Matilda on his shoulders, who played chess with strangers in Washington Square Park, who stayed up late talking about philosophy, art, and love. His laughter was infectious, his generosity quiet but constant. Colleagues remember him as someone who challenged everyone around him to be better, to feel deeper, act harder, and live authentically. Even in exhaustion, he never stopped caring about others. His story reminds us that true art demands vulnerability, but life demands balance. Heath gave the world his vulnerability, and in doing so, became immortal. The tragedy lies not in how he died, but in how briefly he lived and how brightly he burned while he was here. When people watch The Dark Knight today, they don't just see the Joker. They see Heath Ledger, the artist, the dreamer, the father, and the friend. His brilliance endures not in sorrow, but in inspiration. Heath Ledger's story is one of light and shadow, a portrait of a man whose passion both defined and consumed him. In his final days, he wasn't lost. He was simply weary. Those who loved him remembered not the chaos, but the kindness, the laughter that filled rooms, the energy that made everyone around him feel alive. His art changed cinema, but his humanity changed people. More than 15 years later, Heath's legacy continues to echo through every performance that dares to be raw, honest, and fearless. His life was short, but his impact infinite. If this story moved you, take a moment to honor him by living with passion, loving deeply, and checking in on those who hide their pain behind a smile. Like, share, and subscribe to keep celebrating the stories that remind us what it truly means to be human.